And welcome back to this week's episode of Realtor Reacts. I'm Christopher, the Realtor in Realtor Reacts. Folks, we are officially in preseason. This is October 2023. Had to think about the year there. So many years. This is a great opportunity and time to talk about seasonal ownership. And Mr. Gary Abbott has done a video around this topic. Now, as always with the setup here, okay, Realtor Reacts is a reaction show. I don't know exactly what the content is. I have the title of the video, so hopefully we can derive some value from this. Maybe I'll have some things to add to the conversation. The core video is 19 minutes and 49 seconds. Mr. Abbott has an amazing kind of a denim shirt on here. It's working for him. It's really working for him. So let's go ahead and jump in to this week's episode.
It's the new year. Yay, 2023. My first video of 2023. And if you recall, I did a video thanking my subscribers and asking what would be a good topic. And the first topic that I thought I could really do justice because I went through this process, but it came from Mr. P 6538. Thanks for the recommendations. Great year, Gary. How do you maintain a house when you aren't there? Do you have security? Hire a house sitter. How do you handle landscaping, water, and mold issues while you're away? Thanks for the videos. Thanks, Mr. P. That is going to be the basis of today's video, in the sense that I'm going to kind of cover how I maintain my home while being part-time in the villages. And again, this is related to the villages. So others who are looking at, you might get some things, but some things are going to be very specific to the villages. So I want to start common sense, quick things that I want to cover. And I'm going to kind of do it in a top 10. First, you have to determine your budget. And I'm not going to go into the total budget. I'll go a little bit into it at the end of the video, but you really need to know if you can afford a part-time residence. And
so part of the process, right? Establishing a budget, right? How much I refer to it as purchasing power, right? And it's kind of the first step, why is it that when I engage with the realtor immediately hands me off to the mortgage broker, right? Because we're trying to establish your purchasing power, right? What are you actually capable of? And then we can have a conversation about what you're comfortable with, right? But it's assessing, what can we realistically be looking at? Because, the reality is a lot of times our eyes, right, exceed our means. Everybody would love to be in the gorgeous Lantana, right? Or the totally modernized and fresh looking gardenia there, or some variant thereof. But maybe our budget realistically is more in the jasmine, whispering pine range. Of course, we're talking seasonal here, so these would probably be tutus. But let's jump back in. That's kind of why that happens, right? And he's absolutely right. We need to know what we're capable of achieving before we seek to achieve it. So let's jump back in here.
make sure you really have gone through your budget, financial options, all that kind of stuff of how you're going to get this property. I think that's the most important part of going to having a second home, because you're still going to spend money on your primary residence, and then you're going to spend additional money on a part-time home. But it does lead to some financial options to consider as you go through this. So that's number one.
I would disagree with the premise here only in that I feel the most important part is probably establishing that you desire, right? And you would have the time to utilize a part time home, right? I see a lot of situations, not so much as of late, but previously, where it's like, okay, are you going to get the usage, right? Are you going to get the value out of the purchase, right? And I know that's a conversation. You're like, what, Chris, you're a realtor. You're supposed to just push the sale, right? But it doesn't make any sense, particularly when you understand that the crux, the whole purpose is to develop the relationship between agent client, right, or agent customer. Um, it's self defeating in that way, because if you're only able to utilize the part time property for, say, a month, month and a half, maybe 2 months out of the year, then the cost, the carrying costs versus the usage amount doesn't make sense, right? You really have to, in my opinion, right, and I've mathed this out several times over the years, right? You really have to, be able to utilize it 3, maybe 4 months out of the year so that you're getting the usage out of that investment, for it to make sense. So I would argue that that's probably the most important thing, establishing that you're going to have the usage capabilities with your life dynamics as they stand today. Then we can move on to whether or not it's feasible or achievable based on your budgetary needs. So, slight variance. Let's jump back in.
Number two, find a real estate agent or a villages agent. I'm assuming you haven't selected a
Get one of both. That's it.
property yet, so you need to do that. Again, not going to go into that process, but I think it's an important one if you're considering having a part-time home. And the reason between the budget and finding an agent is a part-time home is a second home might not be able to, you might only be able to swing a smaller square foot property to begin with than the full-size home that you may want to retire in. So there's a difference, and you want to make sure you know that. Number three, research the area. Because you're part-time, it really is no different than if you're full-time. Because you want an area that I would assume you're picking a part-time place to eventually move to be your full-time retirement home. And I'm hoping that that's why you're watching this video of moving to the villages, because you're really deciding whether to buy.
My experiences have been different, right? With the part-time purchase, right, our motives are different, our usage case is different, right? The product type is different that tends to fit the usage case scenario. So we don't generally use the same criteria because we're not in the same headspace, right? It's a different purpose. Usually with the part-time homes, right, we tend to be more specialized, right? We really want to be as close to those lifestyle elements as we can, because we're only here for a limited time throughout the year, and we want to get maximum value out of that investment. Okay. When we start looking at the full-time purchase, the criteria tends to change because now we're looking at storage space. We understand that we're going to be here year round or 6 months plus, which could be constituted as full-time in certain cases. But um, it really is a completely different approach, right? In terms of location selection, I find a lot of times that the underlying motives in criteria for the part-time home more or less indicate or decide where that location is going to land based on what you're trying to achieve in terms of lifestyle elements. But it tends to differ from where the full-time home purchase occurs, because again, our criteria, very different criteria between these two purchases. All right, let's jump back in.
Ahead of time before you're ready. And how many years ready? So research the area to make sure that's where you want to be. I think that's the biggest thing. You may turn this into a rental, and that may be another reason to consider the area. But I'm hoping that if you're going to retire, you're picking a home for the second home to be one that you can either downsize into or one that's the size that you want in retirement. Number five, inspect the property, especially.
So let's talk about that. right? This is a more recent development, right? And since I've created the YouTube channel here and I've been more plugged into kind of the social media aspects of everything, and my wife does a fantastic job of keeping me appraised of different conversations and comments that are happening out there in the world. Um, there seems to be a lot of just negative attacking energy around rental properties in the villages. Um, and I don't understand why now, because this is a common utilized strategy, right? Where I'm going to offset my carrying expenses for the seasonal home by renting it during the off season. Very, very, very minimal effectiveness there, but it can be done to some degree. Um, Obviously, results will vary between persons, but uh, I'm seeing a lot of folks are just like, the villages is not a rental. We're not in a destination, resort community type of thing, right? Rentals have always existed. They've always existed in the villages. A percentage of the population has always been transient in that way. And there's a reason for that. There are numerous situations that just don't allow people to make a more lengthy commitment, right? To owning a home and living in the villages. The entire rental market actually lifts up and supports the home value market and the home ownership market, and they do that by allowing those revenues generated for you to then consider a part-time purchase, right? And that part-time purchase oftentimes will lead into a full-time move. And so it kind of all starts from the rental base when you really think about it. I don't understand why all this hostility is coming out now. This has always kind of been part of the makeup of the community and the natural progression of residency. So let's jump back in.
Especially if you're not buying brand new. If you're buying a previously owned home, go through all of those inspection processes. Really make sure that you know any potential problems or costs. And I think this fits with your budget. Now, most of the people know these items so far. Number 6, do your
He's not wrong. Obviously, we always recommend you utilize any and all inspections that you're able to, given the contract. Um, I don't want to go real deep into this because this could be a topic in a video all its own, about expectations and about what realistically can be achieved with inspections. But yes, utilize them if for no other reason than your own peace of mind. Okay, verifying that the property that you're buying doesn't have some type of blaring issue that you're not aware of. Okay. Um, but yeah, that's a broader topic. Maybe we'll jump on that topic at some point in the future. I don't think I even have that on the Insight series. Maybe we'll add that to the Insight series. We'll see. All right, jumping back in. Negotiate the purchase price. Okay.
best to get the best price for whatever your home. Negotiate the purchase price if you can. In the villages, you're buying a new home, there's no negotiating. They set the prices, and that's what it is. If you want it, you buy it. If you don't. And prices are pretty reasonable when it comes to real estate properties and values in the villages. Number 7.
So before we move on to number 7, this is a great opportunity to kind of talk about something that baffles a lot of folks, right? When you get to the villages, your instincts will tell you, oh, new homes should be more expensive, right? Dollar per square foot should be higher. Okay. But that's not the reality. When you actually start looking at the marketplace and you start looking at a category of home, maybe you're even looking at a particular floor plan, and if that floor plan is a legacy plan and it has same as going back in history, right? You start to realize very quickly, no, the pre-owned homes, right, are higher in price, and that baffles, right? It's like, what? Why? It's not new, right? Part of that is the developer's ability to create value in the pricing, right, to spur sales, right, the volume of sales, the rate of turnaround. Um, that's part of it. The other part of it is that there is no negotiating on new home, right? So with pre-owned, everyone understands that there's going to be a negotiation that occurs, okay, because it's built into the, I don't think culture is the right word, but it's an expectation that's been around for a long time. Pre-owned home, a negotiation is going to occur. It's not necessarily built into the price, but the prices over time have reflected that, right? And because of the CMA process and the way that pricing tends to occur, it's kind of already structured in, right? New home, they don't have to worry about negotiating the price. So when you see a differential in pre-owned versus new home pricing in a category, even on a particular floor plan, that's more or less what's happening. That's why that's occurring that way, because that is the price. Maybe, to Gary's point, you could do a little better on a pre-owned home, depending upon, where the seller's motives are and what you're capable and willing of doing. All right, let's jump back in. Number 7.
Is a little bit like the budget at the top. It's a second home. You might not be able to pay cash for a second home. You may have to take out a mortgage. So understand getting a mortgage and what that's going to cost. If you can't buy it outright and keep your current residence, you may have to finance. So look into a mortgage, look at what the interest rate you can get, what that's going to cost you, to add that to all the other costs of maintaining a separate part-time home. Number 8, get insurance. This one's an easy one, but in Florida, you're going to have a lot of questions if you're not from Florida. Flood insurance, is a big one that people question whether you should get or not get. With the Category 4 hurricane that hit southern Florida in 2022, definitely people are looking at it. Talk to a good insurance agent, figure out your insurance. Next is you're going to be part-time. You clearly have got to go there to set up utilities. Number 9 is set up your utilities. And this is everything from electricity, gas, if you're going to have internet, the water and sewer, all of those things is your utilities. And I want to go into those because that's part of maintaining a part-time home. How do you do it long distance?
I only want to pause here for a moment because the statement was you have to go there, meaning the part-time home, I'm assuming, based on the statement, um, to set up the utilities, but I don't think that's the case. I could be wrong about this, but I'm fairly sure because there's a part of the pending process towards the closing phase where your agent is going to, hopefully remind you to set up your utilities, get those transfers set up. Water, trash, and sewer automatically transfer over because they're tied in with the CDD, and they come on your monthly amenities bill there. Um, but your electric, well, I guess for cable, if you're counting cable as a utility, right? Cable internet, yeah, you're probably going to have to be on site to set that up. All right, but as far as electric, water, trash, sewer, electric, I'm fairly sure you can just transfer over via a phone call. All right, let's jump back in here. I'm curious. We're 6 minutes in. We're already on number 8. This is a top 10 video. Where are we going to go with this? It's going to be interesting.
Not there. With setting them up for a new home, you should be going down, getting the keys, and making sure all of these things are set up ahead of time. And number 10, property management. There's a number of companies that will monitor your home, and monitor your home means different things to different people. I know some neighbors in the villages will watch your house for you, but they're not quite the same as a management company who monitors your home, because it's a good idea to run the water, clean the toilets, and run the water there. It keeps from any kind of smells or when the water dries up, or maintaining your heating and cooling. Just enough to make sure that everything stays in balance, whether your water system is on or off. To check your sprinkler heads on your irrigation system. To give you reports like that. Give you reports that they found some strange package in the front of your yard, or they're helpful when somebody needs to show up, a subcontractor needs to show up and fix something. A company management will do a lot more things for you, but you'll pay. But a management company. Now, I used Empty Nest. It's approximately $100 a month if you're not there the entire month. They charge you by the day. So they also get your home ready if you're going to come there for, say, a month, 5 days. They will turn on everything or shut off everything after you leave. So these property management companies also will rent out your home if you want to do that. Say you're not going to be there for an entire.
So a couple of things, right? Initially, obviously, this is a consideration. This is definitely something we need to be thinking about. Once we secure the asset, the part-time home, right? How are we going to maintain the asset? It comes down to risk tolerance and risk management. So, yes, can you build a wonderful relationship with one of your neighbors, and then I have no doubt it's the villages. They will offer to watch your home for you in a lot of cases. So I've had personal experiences with this. We didn't even get the closing. I got the neighbors, over there offering to watch the home because they were in a state of transition. They weren't quite moving in yet, and but property management companies, right? I diverted for just a moment. I wanted to grab this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, right? This is part of the purchase and contacts and outlooks. Here are three of the property management companies that are pretty predominant here in the community. And this is a guide and a book that I give my customers to kind of help them with the um, contacts, most commonly used contacts that they might utilize. Uh, Hometown Property Management used to be a kind of a sister company to Properties of the Villages. It got sold off, I want to say, in like 2013, 14. Don't quote me on that. It might have been a little later, but I want to say that's about right. And now it operates more or less independently from the developer, but they've kind of been the standout, right, for a long time. Since then, a lot more property management companies have come into existence and have been servicing the community to various degrees. Okay. What I'm conveying to you here is that this is going to be one of those things you're going to want to research pretty in depthly, right? I don't really have an opinion on one versus the other. I've never personally utilized any of their services. So, it's difficult for me to point at something and say, well, that's your best option. The costs will vary between these organizations, these companies. I think even Realty Executive has a property management division, although I don't know if they offer empty nest services. And that kind of brings us to my next point. Empty nest services is different than rental services, right? Very different costs. I think the rental services in a lot of cases work on a percentile basis. Empty nest, for all the things that Gary is pointing out to you, are correct, right? Um, they're more or less there to, you know, make you aware and then facilitate anything or help facilitate things that might arise out of the ownership of that property while you're not in town. So, but two very different services and a lot of options, and I just want you to be aware of that. All right, let's jump back in here.
Entire year, you may want to think about a long-term rental. Now, this is completely optional if you go this route, and a whole number of other factors. And I'm not really going to go there. I'm going to go that you just want to be part-time and you want to visit whenever. kind of like me. Sometimes I visit for 5 days, sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 2 weeks. It's in between. But a property management company, I have been very impressed with them. They also give you emails when they visit your home and an update. They also check when there's storms, whether you had any damage or not damage. So a good company will do a lot of those things for you. And it's invaluable. It's invaluable. The next thing that you can do is if you get your house set up with the utilities that we talked about under number 9 and you do the internet, you can set up cameras to look at your house remotely. Clearly, a lot of people do that for security reasons, but pretty much what I found is the lowest cost really internet service is Spectrum, which is $49 a month. Plus, you'll be doing checking on those cameras, and if the cameras have some kind of issue, they might need to be reset. It's hard to do from far away. But those are some of the security type questions that you might have that really come into play when you're living remotely. So a property management company can totally handle that. Now, there are other companies than the one that I went through, which was called Empty Nest. I do believe they're changing their name slightly, kind of hometown property management. They've done a great job. Not only do they give you emails when
Hometown Property Management is the name of the company. Empty Nest is a service that they provide. Um, just a point of clarification, not a big deal.
they visit, they also give you a monthly report. So you can see if they've been there 3 times in a month and what each inspection report, what they did, what they observed, and kind of give you a heads up. So what I want to do is kind of go back to the question that Mr. P had and hopefully see if I have answered part of the questions. That's how I maintain the house. I'm there back and forth, but I do really rely on the management company. The other question he had is security. You can get the internet and get cameras to monitor your own house. Don't really hire a house sitter. That's kind of like if you want your neighbor to do it. I just, I kind of went all the way with the property management company. How do you handle landscaping, water? I think that's irrigation, mold issues while you're away. The landscaping, I at first hired an independent guy. I was looking at the most cost effective way to do this. Don't do that. That person quit after about 5 months. Didn't.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that you get what you pay for? That never happens. Come on, man. Got to save a buck here. In the villages in particular, and I don't know why this is the case, but it seems to be the case, at least based on my observations, you tend to get what you pay for in the villages. A lot of competition. You know, every service that can be provided for is generally provided for in the villages, and there's a lot of options. So, you know, you're never lacking in service providers, but you do tend to get what you pay for. So let's jump back in.
Tell me they quit. I just stopped receiving bills. My home property management company, I asked them, how's the lawn look? And because they give you reports that, you know, whether the lawn looks good or not looks good, the irrigation, your plants, all that kind of stuff. And they saw no issues, but I got on the internet, found out from other people that the company had quit and gone away. So there are a number of major companies that you can pick. I ended up jumping up to Dean's, which does a lot of the mowing, uh, pesticide control, that kind of thing. And I really am glad I did that because at first I thought when I'm part time, every once in a while while I'm down there, I'll handle the pesticide. Well, I can tell you 8 months in my management of pesticides, I seem to find a lot of little ants and the rest outside, but all around my plants and those kind of things, which was a little disturbing. That I hired deans, and they come every 2 months, and they spray, and guess what? After having them for more than 8 months, I don't see any bugs. Every once in a while, a couple, but nothing like when I was trying to do it myself. So Dean's was kind of an all-in-one package. They do your mowing and your pesticide. You pick your package levels that you want to do, and they bill you monthly or every other month for the pesticide. So that's worked out really well for me. Um, and how do you handle mold issues? Well, I haven't really found mold in the sense of like up in New England, when we talk mold, we're talking house mold and black mold. And what I've found with a new house, you do get this green algae mold kind of stuff that will get on your house where the sun doesn't hit it, and it will start to turn green on whatever siding that you have, or whatever. At least for me, I have vinyl siding, and I have found that I need to go out there and pressure wash it every once in a while. So I personally, since I'm there,
I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily mold. I mean, maybe it's some form of mold. I'm not a mold expert, but yeah, with the siding homes, and really even with the block stucco homes to a lesser extent, but definitely with the siding homes, the siding is porous. And what happens is that as the mowers come through, they kick up a lot of dirt and a lot of grass clippings and whatnot, and those over time start to deposit into the siding and into the creases and stuff. One of the advantages of a vinyl home there, right, is you pressure wash it twice a year, usually at the beginning of summer and at the end of summer, where the majority of your mows are going to happen, because that's your growth window. A lot of our grass tends to go dormant here in the villages during the winter months, so that typically works out. In terms of pest control, it's always recommended. I can tell you from personal experience, it's hard to imagine a scenario that's worse than trying to sell a home that has not had regular pest control performed on it. And you're constantly dealing with trying to clean up those palmetto bugs, cockroaches, whatever the heck they are. I literally carry a broom and dustpan with me to my open houses, so that I can tidy up at the beginning and end of every open house, so we can put forth the best presentation. But if I'm dealing with an ongoing pest issue, right, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well at all. So, yeah, good quality continuous pest control services are very important. Okay. And one of the advantages of being in the villages, you know, Chris, you're going to show for the villages. Yeah, because I specialize and I work here. Um, right? Because of our size, because of how big the market is, because of how, median income, I guess that, I don't know, median income, median standing assets, right? We get the best services because it's a very competitive marketplace. And so to be in the villages and to stand the test of time in the villages, you have to be top of your game, right? Otherwise, you're going to get weeded out real quick. So that's just a little perk maybe you weren't aware of moving to the villages. All right, let's jump back in here.
part time, I have bought a pressure washer, the appropriate nozzles, and um, I will call it the appropriate soap that you put on the house to kill that kind of stuff. And
I will commend Gary because in all my years here in the villages, right, I have a frame vinyl home, right? I think I pressure washed it myself one time. Pressure washing is one of those things that it, you know, my personal experience is so inexpensive, right, to have performed by somebody else that it's not worth the time investment for me, right? I think the last time I had it done, it was like 100, for the whole house. Obviously, if you're doing concrete and walkways, that's different. But for just the house, it was really inexpensive. And I looked at the time investment. And I said, No, I'm just gonna pay somebody to do it. So, or you could do it yourself. It's up to you. In the summer months, not me. No, sir. No, jumping back in.
And that has worked really well. I had in my first year, I had one back wall that clearly was a really green, and I got out there and power washed it, and looked just like brand new. So probably a big thing in Florida is if you don't want to do it, there are companies that will power wash your house for you, and most people recommend about once a year. So I think if that's what you're getting at mold issues, I don't really find mold. Um, the heat of the summer, the temperature, the house heats up. I have not found any problem with mold, but I also have a brand new home. So,
So I'm glad he came back around and revisited that because I did want to touch base on that, right? I'm going to be very careful how I say this, right? Because every rule has an exception, okay? And the second that I say, oh, we don't really have mold issues in the villages, I'm going to get 6 people in the comment section. Well, I heard a story or I know a friend or something to that effect, right? In my observations over many years, a decade plus here, okay, I have not encountered mold in the homes. You can do a mold inspection. I have never found any hazardous or dangerous amounts of mold. Okay. Does mold exist in a home? Right. To some degree, I'm sure it does. Right. The real question is, has it reached or is the environment conducive for it to become hazardous to your health? Right. To become an issue. Not in my experience, generally speaking. Okay, so I just want to, because people hear mold and they go, right? We get real antsy about that particular topic. We just want to, it's okay, right? It's not very common, right? Get your mold inspection if you want it, okay? If it makes you feel better, right? Peace of mind is invaluable, in my opinion. Jumping back in.
those are kind of the answers to this question that, it's much easier to maintain a home distance wise. You do have to kind of make sure you understand what it's going to cost you. Because clearly, a part time home, whether you buy a villa, 1,000 square feet, whether you buy a home that's 1,500 square feet or like a designer home of 2,000 square feet, the prices are going to vary. And they're going to vary for your utilities, and they're going to vary for your water bill and sewer bill, and your amenities fee won't change, but it will. The fixed rate that you get goes up every year, and you kind of have to plan on it. I did another video, what does it cost to live in the villages, which was really based on my part time. And, you know, those costs, I mean, one of the things I've really found is because I'm part time, the costs are much lower than New England. My electric bill in New England this month was $250. My electric bill in the villages, not, I was there for part of a week for last month in December. It's like $40. Big difference. Now, if you're there all the time with security system and everything else, yeah, I want to tell you that it's going to cost you $100 a month with everything going. But as a part time, you spend a lot of time with everything at minimal. The last thing that I kind of want to add to this last topic of maintenance, which is the big one that Mr. P wanted to know about, was with all of these different costs, you still have your property tax, your bond, whatever you've agreed to. So when you look at the utilities, keep in mind that you've got all these other costs for an annual cost to own the home. Right now in the villages, I'm looking at it as a very positive thing. I get to go there part time, so I get to use the house, and it's growing in value that is about equal. Now I could look at it a different way. don't buy in the villages too early before you're ready to retire, because that amount's going to just keep um, costing you every month, every year. It's going to cost you. And are you really making out versus saving that amount of money and buying a house when you're ready to retire? So these are kind of the choices that you've got to make. I hope this was helpful.
Admittedly, I got a little lost there on what point Gary was getting at. Um, I think what he's suggesting, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, Mr. Abbott. Right? I think what he's suggesting is that while you could invest in a home in a seasonal purchase, preempting a full time move, right, somewhere in the future, right, that would be a stagnant investment that wouldn't have a high yield of return. Conversely, you could find a better investment vehicle that would produce better annually, and that might be a more effective way to utilize your money. Um, I mean, yeah, I could see that as a relevant point, right? But when you're making the investment in the home, setting aside the benefits of having an anchor property in the community, right? You're buying the value of the lifestyle and the value of the interaction. So that's going to be determinable based on your interpretation. So let's jump back in here and wrap up.
I didn't go into the detail of every bill. If you want me to do that, mention it in the comments, because I'm willing to do that. But I think this is really the top 10 things that you got to look at if you want to purchase part time in the villages prior to retirement. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hey, I also got a lot of recommendations for videos, so I'm looking forward to doing those. But Mr. P, thanks for the first one. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.
Mr. Gary Abbott, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not subscribed to Mr. Abbott's channel, please do take a moment and shoot over there. Give him a subscription. He certainly earned it. Mr. Abbott is consistent with his content, to say the least. And what I really appreciate about Gary's content is that he makes good points. He raises better points, right? In kind of the ongoing chronicling of his experiences and kind of his journey through the purchase and ownership process, which is fantastic and invaluable for us as a viewing audience. And a snazzy dresser, right? Looking good there, Gary. All right, so that's been this week's episode. Before we finish up here, I know the episode's running a little longer. Um, Gary had mentioned something at the beginning of the episode about going to his audience and asking about topics that they would um, like to see him work on. I haven't done that because Realtor Reacts Insight Series. There's another show that's going to be coming up beyond that in the future here. If you're watching this in the future, then you already know what these shows are and what they're about. But um, I've kind of got a holistic approach to the YouTube channel. So we're going to be covering everything. It's simply a matter of time. I like to do things in an organized way, so I don't typically want to jump around a whole lot about different things. Although Realtor Reacts, by its very nature, has me doing that a lot of times. So, but that's why I haven't kind of gone to the audience and the subscriber base and kind of posed these type of questions, right? It's not that I don't value your input, I do, but there's a bigger plan, and I'm thinking more, 5-10 year outlook. So thank you so much for joining us, me, on this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you derived something from it. I hope you were entertained to some degree or another. Have a great one. Take care of yourself. Take care of others where you can. And if you're not in the villages, well, we can certainly have a conversation about that. And Mr. Abbott will be happy to outline some of the costs associated. All right. Have a good one.